Hey guys, I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. I literally pre-recorded a show for you this morning so I wouldn't have to stream live from the airport. So I need to know, guys, can you hear me? Yes. If so, I can do this all over again. We have got some flippin' breaking news. Yes, the big, beautiful disaster is happening right now. And the breaking news is, and I don't know if you're going to fully believe this, but the bill that we were told would never cut Medicare is going to do so. And so let me share with you the facts here. As you probably have already heard, this bill is going to kick many people off Medicaid, even those who are working middle class and poor. And we have talked about that. But what is crazy, what is the most
As you know,
crazy thing here right now is that this bill, what we found out yesterday around 9 o'clock p.m. from the Democrat, the leading Democrat on the budget committee, is that this legislation will literally take a $50 billion bite out of, guess what? Medicare. And I have the receipts right here. What you're going to see first is Jim McGovern, who is the ranking member, meaning the lead Democrat on the Rules Committee. And he was part of this group that pulled an all-nighter. And here's what we find out. There's legislation called PAYGO, and this is the breaking news. You may not know about it. People who are policy wonks know about it, but it's almost like a break the glass moment. The minute legislation is enacted that exceeds a certain amount, $1 trillion in deficit, automatically there's this thing that happens called sequestration. Fancy word for we need to slash the F out of the budget. And so Jim McGovern is going to hear, as you see, ask the head Democrat on the budget committee, whose name is Brendan Boyle, what the F is going on. Let's go.
as you know, statutory pay-go, which stands for pay-as-you-go, is a law that requires tax cuts and spending increases to be offset, meaning that they do not add to the deficit. If at the end of the year, congressional legislation collectively violates pay-go, those deficit effects trigger across-the-board cuts to programs like Medicare. Does this bill trigger statutory pay-go?
Yes, and it's not me saying it. It is the Congressional Budget Office confirming it as of a couple hours ago. And look, this is really the breaking news, because when the Budget Committee kicked off this process approximately 3 months ago, there was a commitment by President Trump that there would be no Medicare cuts in this piece of legislation. And indeed, over the last several months, there's been no discussion of Medicare at all. There has been of Medicaid, but not of Medicare. Well, here we are tonight because, as you explained, because of the size of the deficits, because of the pay-go or pay-as-you-go act, that would trigger sequestration of Medicare, and it would total over $500 billion. The official figure that CBO confirms is $535 billion in cuts to Medicare.
$535 billion in cuts to Medicare. You heard it. I know you guys thought that maybe I misspoke, and that can happen. We all actually do that. But I said Medicare in addition to the $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid. So why? I need to share with you a little more from Boyle so you can actually understand. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about it.
Again, from the CBO, specifically their numbers, for people in the bottom 10%, they will experience a 4% loss of household wealth. Meanwhile, for people in the top 10%, they will see their household resources increase by 2%. It is as simple as that.
And I ask unanimous consent that this be entered into the record, Madam Chair.
Without objection.
My view on legislation is that if you believe in the legislation, you ought to vote for it. If you don't believe in it, you ought to vote against it. So I would say to my friend Chairman Arrington, if you believe the stuff that's contained in this reconciliation bill, if you think these priorities are the right priorities, and if these represent your values, then by all means, vote for it. I'll disagree with you. I mean, I could spend all day here because I'm also on the Agriculture Committee, and we had a lengthy hearing on the impact of the nutrition cuts on average people and on states, too. There's an unfunded mandate here as well. And it's going to be significant. But if this bill represents your values, I'll just say for the record, it doesn't represent my values. And so, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. But
So doesn't represent my values, and it shouldn't represent yours. They are not telling us the truth about what they're doing here in Congress. And this bill is not going to get through if the public hears. And if it does, it will destroy the careers of many Republicans in Congress, because I don't think this is what they want or their constituents want. So, what the heck is going on here? Well, I need to share with you so you actually believe me what the CBO had to say to Brendan Boyle. Okay, so they actually did this preliminary analysis that he is talking about. And so, you know how I like to bring the receipts. Let me share that screen with you, guys. Here we go. So you can see here a letter from the Congressional Budget Office to Brendan Boyle dated yesterday. And this is this preliminary analysis of the bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And here they're talking about how, with this legislation is enacted, what would actually happen here. And when I'm going to scroll down here, that there would be an increase in the federal deficit of $3.8 trillion as a result of this. And because of this, in this, we are going to have, and this is the lengthy memo here, they're showing what is going to happen. But the bottom line here is that Medicare will be cut. And I had a different, I'm going to stop sharing this. I had a different letter to from CBO showing you those Medicare cuts in the preliminary analysis of this. And I was not able to zero in on the part there that I wanted to show you, saying that there would be these huge increases, that it would be an automatic increase, automatic cut through sequestration. So sorry about that. It was in the upload. But okay, guys, we're going to keep going on this. So this is terrible. And there was an all-nighter in the House where the Democrats began at the time that the Republicans who run the Rules Committee, which is the one who's looking at this legislation in the House, this big, beautiful bill, this big, disastrous bill. And what they learned was just hours before that this would add so much money to the deficit that there would be sequestration, automatic cuts, and those cuts would deeply cut into Medicare. We're talking about throwing grandma, throwing you, throwing other folks off Medicare. Now, there is more. Won't we have, though, we've been promised from Donald Trump that food prices will go down.
On lowering the price of groceries, how do you justify cutting food assistance in this bill?
Let me just tell you, the cut is going to give everybody much more food because prices are coming way down. Groceries are down. Eggs. You told me about eggs. You asked me a question about eggs my first week. You said eggs. I said, I just got here. Tell me about eggs. And it was going through the roof. You know that eggs now are way down. Everybody's buying eggs. Groceries down. Energy's down. Gasoline is now they're buying gasoline now for $1.99. If you look back, you'll see $3.50, $4. This country, we're going to lose this country.
Okay, that is all lies. There's not gas at $1 something a gallon. Egg prices are not down. So he'll just say whatever he wants to say, and enough people will hear this, and no one really will challenge him. Because if you are a member of the press corps who challenges him on the facts, you don't get invited back. And so let's also talk here. about other price hikes. Yesterday, we talked about Walmart saying they were going to pass along the costs of the import taxes, the tariffs to consumers. And we know they got slammed. This had happened in an earnings call where they have to be honest with investors about their projections, what they are based on. And Donald Trump didn't like that. And he said, eat it, eat the cost of the tariffs. We talked a little bit about the supply chain and how at the end of the day, if the tariffs are as high as we think they could be and how erratic Donald Trump was being. First, we have his, Secretary of Defense saying, oh, it's all going to be fine. And we heard these numbers of them going down to like 10% for some countries. It's not down to the baseline, right? Like in England, it was only like around 3%. So 10 is still higher. And then China, he, jacked it up to over 100%. And maybe that was going to go down to 30. We had heard that. But then yesterday, Donald Trump is like, I want it to be at 100%. So look, he's all over the board. And how do businesses plan? And they plan by thinking about how they're going to pass the cost along to customers. It's either that or fire workers or shareholders taking a cut. That ain't going to happen. So what's going on outside of Walmart, folks? It's not just Walmart. I got to share with you a story about Target. So what you see here is there was an article a few days ago about a Target worker who went on to Reddit to expose increased prices at the store. So what I want to show you here is this worker's Reddit post. So I'm reading you what it says. The Target employee was tasked with swapping out price tags and took a picture while doing so with the price tag for a USB-C cord. USB-C cords, those are the things that plug into most iPhones and some computers to charge them. So the price for a USB-C cord going from $9.99 to $17.99 in one swift move. According to the Target employee, this is just the beginning and, quote, all of heyday is going up, end quote, referring to the Target in-house electronics brand. So what you see here is you could have bought a USB-C cord before you swap this out for $9.99. Now it's $17.99. Now, friends, I'm doing really quick math on this because it's not 100% markup, but it's pretty damn close. Like it looks to be an over roughly 80% markup. That is huge. So it looks like Target is going out and changing its prices because where do you think USB-C cords are made? They're not probably made in the US. They might be made in China. I have not looked at my package. And listen, you might think, oh, I don't need a USB-C cord. Have you been alive? Have you ever left your phone cord at the airport, at a friend's house? Has a friend taken it? Has it broken? And let me tell you, you're trying to buy a cheaper one. We've all done that. You're trying to pop into a CVS or whatever, buy the cheaper brand. Those crap out and you've got to buy another one. And you think those are going to not go up in price. This is a small thing, right? You might think, oh, this is, a luxury good. iPhones and smartphones are not luxury goods. They're, for most people, their only form of communication. I don't have a landline. It's not just your form of communication. For most people, it's research, it's to get jobs, it's their computer. So that is one example of something going up. Okay, so we've got some more here. And I know that our focus here is often on money, law, and power. And we've talked a little about one of the money issues, which is this disastrous budget bill. But I really need to share with you something else that is going on here. And that is beyond these price hikes, right? So if you think about this, the price hikes are hurting us because this is sort of our trade and a big part of tax policy, because it's Donald Trump's view that in trade, people are ripping us off if we buy stuff from them more than they buy from us, which is not exactly how things work. And then also this idea that he wants to bring in a ton of money through import taxes, even though those are paid by our businesses, because he thinks that he can substitute import taxes and other forms of tax for the income tax because they want to cut or they want to restore or extend the tax credits that have, or the tax cuts that have helped billionaires and 100 millionaires and corporations, have not helped the middle class or working poor. Of course, they want to extend those. And in order to do that, they need to make these cuts in the budget, right? That's the plan. Now, here's the deal. There's another piece to this. more and more, Donald Trump is saying, he wants to cut taxes, which I think the people would be happy in theory. But if your income tax is cut, but your prices go up because of this import tax, that's just a hidden tax, right? Plus, it's not clear that all of our taxes will go down, but that's still in the working. And if you actually got rid of all income tax, which seems unlikely, but if you did, what do you substitute? Okay, you cannot recover unless we would have, you would not be able to just on import taxes, on tariffs, make up for what we bring in terms of income taxes from all of us, from our payroll taxes, from what's deducted from our paycheck, from what the more wealth we pay. It wouldn't work. So they're going to have to impose something like a national sales tax. I don't know what the plan is, but something must be in the works. And here's why. The nominee, and we're getting into the intersection of law and money here, the nominee that Donald Trump has put forward to run the IRS has really no experience in tax. He's a former member of Congress, an auctioneer who, if you can believe it, was caught up in some scheme to sell tax credits from Indian reservations that did not exist. That sounds like tax fraud to me. I'm not saying it is. He hasn't been charged with anything, but on top of it, he has not even committed to understanding what the law says. And so what I want you to see now, because it's kind of remarkable, is what happened yesterday in the Senate when Senator Elizabeth Warren brought her A game, her law professor Socratic method game, to a hearing for which the nominee should have been prepared. But let's take a look at what happened. Here's part one of the grilling of Billy Long, Donald Trump's nominee for
Legal for the
IRS
president to instruct the IRS to remove nonprofit status from a taxpayer.
I'm not going to have the answer that you need, and I apologize, but like I said.
Why are you not having the answer? You've had 3 weeks to consult with lawyers. The statute is about as clear as plain English.
Well, if I say I'm going to follow the law, why would you need to ask me the question?
Well, because I want to make sure that you understand what the law says. If you think follow the law means you just get to make it up on the spot, then, Bud, you don't get to be the IRS commissioner.
I said I would.
The point here is to follow the law as it is written. And I'm asking what I think is a pretty simple question. Can the President of the United States legally tell the IRS to change someone's nonprofit status?
I'm not able to answer.
You can't read these words and tell what those words say?
I can read the statute, and I did.
All right, then tell me what they mean. What?
Okay. Read the statute and tell me what it means, because he keeps saying I'll follow the law, but we don't need this plausible deniability like, oh, I don't know what the law actually says. So let's hear how this goes, because it doesn't go well. And this should matter. Let's see if it actually does when he gets confirmed. Sorry to fucking say.
It mean to say that a person, an applicable person here, that's the president, right?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Cannot directly or indirectly, right, tell any officer or employee, that would be you, of the Internal Revenue Service to conduct or terminate an audit or other investigation of any particular taxpayer. What part do you not understand here?
It seems to be a nonprofit. I don't see exactly what it refers to.
Any taxpayer.
Hold on 1 second. You know what this is about? I'm going to continue. This is about the threats Donald Trump has made against Harvard University because they won't bend the knee that he's going to take away their tax-exempt status. Let's continue.
An investigation of any taxpayer.
If it's illegal, I'm not going to allow it to happen in my IRS.
Is it illegal? That's the question.
Me and you will be friends then. I want to be your
statute.
friend anyway, but we will be on the same page. I'm going to follow the law, and if that's point blank the law.
What do you understand the law to be saying about the president telling the IRS in his dealings with any particular taxpayer. What do you understand this law to be saying?
I think it sounds like it's saying what you're saying, but I've got a little bit of the section here, and I talked to an attorney that used to be at the IRS and now going to maybe be back at the IRS, and I'm sorry if I don't have the answer.
What, you mean the lawyers told you they couldn't understand this?
The what?
The lawyers told you they couldn't understand this?
I didn't say that.
Well, then tell me, what part do you not understand? It says no person, and you said that's the president, that includes the president, cannot instruct any officer, that would be you, of the IRS to conduct or to terminate an audit or other investigation for any particular taxpayer.
I don't intend to let anybody direct me to start audit for political reasons or any other type of reason.
Does that include the President of the United States?
That's anyone.
Can you say
Anyone.
yes, that the President of the United States cannot tell the IRS what to do?
I can tell them they're not going to tell me what to do. I can't speak for if there's other agents at the IRS that you're talking about, but I'm telling you what I don't want to have happen in my IRS.
I really have almost no words for this. And let me just say this. What you may not know is this. In the Senate, in order to get a vote on a nominee, cloture for nominees is only a simple majority, just 51 people. You don't need to get to 60, okay? So this guy, Billy Long, could sail through with not a single Democratic senator in support and become the IRS commissioner. And why do I mention this? I'm hoping Republicans also recognize that this guy is totally unqualified, but I understand their party loyalty and they'll probably do what Donald Trump says they should do. But mark my words, if there is a single Democrat who supports this guy, they should be run out of town on a rail. I think anyone who supports this guy should be. And there's more. I really do have to share with you from the New York Times this story about Billy Long. Okay, I think you can see this. This article was published yesterday. Here's Billy Long. I think you would recognize him right there because he is, this is the image you just saw of him being grilled by Elizabeth Warren. But let me scroll down for you. Or up. Trump's pick to lead IRS promoted a non-existent tax credit. Billy Long's effort to promote the credit, along with his advocacy of a fraud-ridden pandemic-era tax break, was scrutinized during his Senate confirmation hearing. Indeed, it was. And so he was asked about it. And here is what he was asked. So apparently he pitched his friends on a tax credit that doesn't exist. And it was a so-called tribal tax credit as a supposed tax break offered by a company called White River Energy Corp, which is an Arkansas-based oil and gas company. And he encouraged people to buy it. And he said, I had no indication that they were anything but real. Okay. So you might say to yourself, well, how would someone who is an accountant or like expert make this mistake? Oh, I think I know the answer to that. Let's look at this. This is an article from December. Donald Trump had plenty of time to decide he was not the right nominee. And let me just tell you, what does this say? This is from ProPublica, December 20th, 2024, by Jeremy Kaler and Alex Majerski. Here's the headline. Billy Long, Trump's nominee to lead the IRS, touts a credential that tax experts say is dubious. Want to hear what the credential is? The former representative from Missouri, or Missouri, if you prefer, who once pushed to abolish the IRS, has marketed himself as a certified tax and business advisor after attending only a 3-day seminar. Friends, I have attended more than that amount of time focused on a range of legal topics, and I would never hold myself out to be an expert in an area which I truly am not, which are very few areas. And so it is astonishing that he would even be nominated with his lack of experience and with his previous desire to abolish the IRS, unless the goal is, as we have talked about, actually dismantling the IRS. And why should that be any different from, for example, the Department of Health and Human Services, where piece by piece, RFK Jr. is perfectly comfortable with dismantling all the good things they are doing there. So I need to share with you now, since we're pivoting, we were talking about money, law, and power. Now here is another situation involving law and this case power. And this is RFK Jr. being grilled yesterday at a different Senate hearing about why in the hell the Department of Health and Human Services is deciding to cut funding for ALS. And this is the disease that Lou Gehrig actually died of, as opposed to what they now call Lou Gehrig's disease. But anyway, let us go.
Remind you, on April 1st, 10 laboratory heads at National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Strokes received their layoff notices. They were all PhDs and senior investigators. They're not administrators, whatever that might be. They were running intramural labs at NIH. If you have your way, they'll all be gone on June 2nd. Science magazine reported 25 of 320 physician researchers at NIH's Internal Clinical Center are leaving, and the number of patients treated in the hospital has been reduced by 30%. 3 grants involving ALS and dementia work at Northwestern University in Illinois have been paused. One looking at how to stop the buildup of damaged proteins, another looking at cellular mechanisms that can be drug targets. Just last week, an ALS researcher at Harvard had his grant cut that was using AI to accelerate the reversal of ALS symptoms. Brian Wallach is waiting for a cure. He is not giving up. His source of hope is this research that you unfortunately are terminating. How can we possibly address his concerns and give hope to people across the country who are suffering for so many diseases when our government is cutting back on that research?
As I said, Senator, I do not know about any cuts to ALS research, and I'm happy to meet with you.
I just read them to you.
I will have to go and talk with Jay Bhattacharya and find out what the rationale was for those cuts. I just don't know about them until you told me about them.
How can you not know about major cuts to ALS research at your agency? This seems to be what they all do. I don't know about that. I don't understand that. This isn't disqualifying. It's astonishing. And there's more. Given his antipathy that is not even founded on sound medical research, that's founded on a debunked study, he is afraid of and preaches against vaccinations. And so what is happening, and I'm speaking mostly of the MMR children, the vaccine, but I am also speaking about the COVID vaccine. You may have heard yesterday that there was an announcement that now if we want a COVID booster in the fall, something I often get the same day I get my flu shot at CVS, if you want that booster and you are below the age, I think, of 65, I'm going to tell you this in a second, you are not actually eligible for it unless you fall into some other high risk category. Now, the headlines say that, but the good news is those so-called high-risk categories are more plentiful than you would think. So this was announced in the news. It's based on a study yesterday by Vinay Prasad that the CDC is going to follow. An evidence-based approach to COVID vaccinations is what they call it. And here what they say, basically, here's an excerpt, that essentially if you are between the age of 6 months and 65, you cannot get a COVID booster unless you fall into one of these severe COVID outcome risks. And what is that? Here's this long list in that chart. I broke it in half so you can actually see it. So the good news is the vast majority of us for those of us in my age group, middle age and above, you probably either have asthma or you're a former smoker or you're considered to have a BMI of greater than 30. Maybe you have a history of depression and so on, diabetes or whatever. Okay, so then you would be entitled to get this shot. But you know who is not actually entitled to it? People who live with those at high risk. And this is important because if you are at high risk and you get the vaccine, let's say you're over 65 or you are like me, like you have asthma, or you are someone who's immune compromised with cancer. When I was living with my mother, when she had cancer, let's say I didn't have asthma, everyone around her should have gotten the COVID vaccine because that's really important. Just because she was vaccinated doesn't mean there might not be a breakthrough. But this is not now going to be permitted. Now, you might say, well, I'm just going to go in then and lie and say I'm a former smoker when I'm not. Don't do that. If you do something just to get the COVID booster, like lie and say you're a former smoker, that could affect your life insurance or your health insurance. You need to be very truthful and push back against this idea that they're rationing vaccines. They're not giving us a choice about whether we get this booster for this extremely deadly disease. I still remember when the bodies were were piling up in refrigerated trucks, when hospitals had no room for people, when if your loved one died, you couldn't even be there with them. We don't want a repeat of that, but it sure as hell seems like RFK Jr. does not care. Now, my plane is about to board, so I do need to now get to Crazy Town, you guys. And Crazy Town falls into this same arena of letting someone run an agency who is unqualified and does not know the law. And I think you know where this is going. Let's do it. Okay, a little jazz hands there. So we are going to look now at Maggie Hassan, who was in the Senate yesterday, and she had Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, the director before her. And as you know, the Department of Homeland Security is embroiled in much litigation, including at the Supreme Court, and now more recently appears to be violating the Supreme Court orders by sending Vietnamese nationals to Sudan without any due process. That's a separate issue we can dig into tomorrow. But I will say the biggest thing that we have focused on is the constitutional right of habeas corpus, which we have talked about, is presumed in the US Constitution because it came from England and it was important to us when we declared our independence. I mean, I wasn't there, but the founders, and when we established the Constitution. And so the Constitution is written in such a way that we have the right of habeas corpus, except under circumstances very limited where the president suspends it. And again, these circumstances are extremely limited. And we have talked about those circumstances. So when you see this in the US constitutional language, you can see what it says. It's Article 1, Section 9 of the US Constitution. And what does it actually say? The suspension clause says the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when, in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Okay? This is in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. Article 1 is the powers of Congress. The thought is that it is only the case when Congress suspends the right of habeas corpus. Now, you may say, but what? President Lincoln did it without Congress. Well, Congress went back and ratified it. Plus, it was in the time of the Civil War and public safety required it. Let's listen to what Kristi Noem says to Maggie Hassan when she is asked exactly what is the writ of habeas corpus. This is going to blow your flippin' mind.
Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas
right
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the Live Free or Die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has
that this
never
president,
been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress.
Oh my God. Yes, this is first semester of law school, or at least second semester. And it is, to me, utterly astonishing and crazy town that this is happening. Keep your eyes out. They're telling you exactly what they're doing here. And we must resist. This has been the worst few days that I think we have seen yet. But there is hope because you are watching and I am watching. And I will thank you so much for your support. Welcome, newcomers. And I want to share with you a new photo of our show mascot. This is Tank, the tortoise, who is now eating his breakfast or eating her breakfast. And she is, of course, one of our mascots. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Taub show where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There is hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Taub show.